My name is Arlene. I'm 32 years old, and 3 months ago I thought my marriage to one of Manhattan's most successful hedge fund managers was unbreakable. I was coming home to our luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park after being laid off from my marketing director position. That's when Harrison made his cold announcement about splitting everything 50-50 despite his millions. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just looked at him with calm eyes and said, "All right." He didn't expect what happened after that. Before I continue this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that subscribe button and like if you've ever felt undervalued by someone who was supposed to love you. Now let me tell you exactly how I turned his own game against him. I met Harrison Sterling at a charity gala 7 years ago. The Metropolitan Museum was glowing with golden lights that evening, and I was there representing my company, a Fortune 500 firm, where I worked as a rising marketing executive. Harrison approached me near the Monet exhibit, champagne flute in hand, perfectly tailored tuxedo fitting his athletic frame like it was painted on. He had this confidence that came from knowing he could buy anything in that room, including the art on the walls. "You're the only person here actually looking at the paintings," he said, standing beside me as we both gazed at water lilies. "Everyone else is too busy networking." I laughed, turning to face him properly. His green eyes held genuine interest, not the predatory gleam I'd grown accustomed to at these events. "Well, when you're surrounded by this much beauty, it seems criminal to ignore it for small talk about quarterly earnings." That's how it started. Within minutes, we were discussing Impressionism, then modern art, then somehow we'd moved on to our favorite restaurants in the city. Harrison had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in a crowded room. He listened intently when I talked about my work in marketing, asking intelligent questions about brand strategies and consumer psychology. He wasn't just waiting for his turn to speak like most men I'd dated. Our first real date was 3 days later. He sent a car to pick me up from work, a sleek black Mercedes with a driver who called me Miss Arlene, like I was already somebody important. We went to Daniel, where apparently Harrison had a permanent reservation. The sommelier knew his preferences by heart. The chef came out to greet us personally, and our table overlooked the private garden. "This is a bit much for a first date," I told him over the amuse-bouche, trying to keep things light despite being thoroughly impressed. "Nothing's too much when it's right," he replied, and somehow when he said it, it didn't sound like a line. The whirlwind romance that followed was everything my girlfriends read about in romance novels. Private jets to Paris for weekend getaways, box seats at the Met Opera, a surprise birthday party on a yacht circling Manhattan. But what really drew me in wasn't the extravagance. It was the way Harrison seemed genuinely interested in my career success. When I landed a major client for my firm, he celebrated with more enthusiasm than he showed for his own million-dollar deals. When I pulled all-nighters preparing presentations, he'd have my favorite Thai food delivered to my office without being asked. 6 months in, he proposed at the top of the Empire State Building, which he'd somehow arranged to have privately after closing. The ring was a 4-carat cushion, cut diamonds surrounded by sapphires. But what made me say yes was the speech he gave about building an empire together, being equal partners in life. We married the following spring in the Hamptons. 400 guests, a reception that made it into the Times social pages, and a honeymoon sailing through the Greek islands on a friend's yacht. My parents retired. School teachers from Ohio were overwhelmed by the grandeur. My mother pulled me aside during the reception, worry creasing her forehead. "Honey, this is all beautiful, but are you sure you know what you're getting into? This isn't our world." "It's my world now, Mom," I told her, champagne making me bold. "And Harrison sees me as his equal. That's all that matters." How naive I was then, dancing in my $40,000 Vera Wang dress, believing that love conquered all differences. Moving into Harrison's penthouse was like stepping into a magazine spread. $40 million bought you 5,000 square feet on the 72nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. The interior designer had created a modern masterpiece of marble glass and carefully curated art. The master bathroom alone was larger than my previous studio apartment, with a soaking tub that overlooked the city lights. "This is ours now," Harrison said, wrapping his arms around me as we stood on the terrace that first night. "Everything I have is yours." But even then, there were subtle distinctions. The penthouse remained titled in his name alone. The bank accounts, while some were joint, the major investment portfolios stayed separate. "For tax purposes," his accountant explained, and I didn't question it. Why would I? I was making excellent money as a marketing executive. I'd been promoted twice since we'd started dating, and my salary had climbed to a healthy six figures. I insisted on contributing to our life together despite Harrison's protests. "I need to maintain my independence," I told him firmly. "I'm not going to be a kept woman." He found this amusing and admirable in equal measure. "My brilliant wife," he'd introduced me at events, "runs marketing for one of the hottest tech startups in the city. I paid for our groceries, my extensive wardrobe, small household items, and gifts for friends and family." It felt important to contribute, even though my entire annual salary was less than what Harrison made in a good month. He handled the mortgage, the maintenance fees, utilities, and major purchases. The arrangement felt equitable in its own way. We were both contributing according to our means. 2 years into our marriage, I was promoted to marketing director at my startup. The salary bump was significant, and I celebrated by buying us a week-long vacation to Turks and Caicos, paid entirely with my bonus. Harrison seemed proud, posting photos of us on social media with captions about his powerhouse wife. The lifestyle was intoxicating. Dinner parties with CEOs and celebrities. Charity galas, where we'd casually bid $20,000 on auction items. Weekends in the Hamptons at friends' estates. I learned to navigate this world, to speak its language of subtle brags and coded references to wealth. I became fluent in designer labels, vintage wines, and the best private schools for the children we'd eventually have. Harrison's hedge fund, Sterling Capital Management, was one of those firms whispered about in financial circles. They managed money for billionaires, sovereign wealth funds, institutional investors with holdings that moved markets. Harrison himself was the star trader, known for his aggressive strategies and almost supernatural ability to predict market movements. His annual bonus alone was usually 8 figures. "You'll never have to worry about money," he told me one evening as we reviewed our finances with his wealth manager. "Even if something happened to me, you're set for life." The prenuptial agreement we'd signed said as much. Standard language about maintaining lifestyle mutual support, equitable distribution of assets acquired during marriage. I'd had my own lawyer review it, and she'd assured me it was fair, even generous by New York standards. Looking back, I realize how completely I'd surrendered my financial autonomy without realizing it. Yes, I had access to credit cards with no limits. Yes, I could buy whatever I wanted within reason. But Harrison controlled the real wealth. He made the investment decisions, managed our tax strategies, decided when we'd upgrade cars or redecorate. I was a passenger in my own financial life, content to let him drive, because the ride was so smooth. My career continued to flourish. The startup was gaining serious traction, and as marketing director, I was integral to our growth strategy. I loved the work, the challenge of building something from scratch, the adrenaline of competing against established players. My team respected me, my CEO valued my input, and I was building a reputation in the industry independent of being Harrison Sterling's wife. We'd been married for 4.5 years when the first warning signs appeared in the economy. Interest rates were rising, tech valuations were contracting, and whispers of layoffs began circulating through the industry. Our startup had burned through its latest funding round faster than expected, and the board was pressuring for profitability over growth. "Maybe you should start looking elsewhere," Harrison suggested over dinner one night, "just to be safe." "We're fine," I assured him, confident in our company's prospects. "We just landed 2 major enterprise clients. Revenue is up 40% quarter over quarter." But revenue growth couldn't outpace our burn rate, and when the board brought in a new CEO focused on efficiency, I knew trouble was coming. Still, I never imagined I'd be caught in the crossfire. I was performing well, my campaigns were successful, and I had strong relationships across the organization. The Tuesday morning that changed everything started like any other. I kissed Harrison goodbye as he left for his 6 a.m. workout, reviewed my presentations for the day's meetings, and arrived at the office by 8:30. The email asking me to stop by HR at 10 a.m. seemed routine. Maybe they needed to discuss the new contractor agreements I'd requested. But when I walked into that conference room and saw our HR director sitting with the new CEO and a lawyer, my stomach dropped. The folder in front of them had my name on it. "Arlene, please have a seat," the HR director said, her voice professionally sympathetic. "I'm afraid we have some difficult news." The words restructuring and elimination of redundancies floated through the air like toxic fumes. The new CEO explained that the entire marketing department was being consolidated with the sales team under new leadership. My position, along with 5 others, was being eliminated effective immediately. "This is not a reflection on your performance," he assured me, sliding the severance package across the table. "You've been exceptional. We're prepared to offer 6 months of salary, continued health benefits through the end of the year, and a strong recommendation letter." I sat there stunned as they walked through the terms. My assistant would pack my office. Security would escort me out within the hour. Standard procedure. Nothing personal. 4 years of building that department, launching successful campaigns, mentoring junior staff, and it ended with a folder and a rehearsed speech. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Colleagues averted their eyes, already informed of the changes. My assistant Janet was crying as she handed me a box with my personal items. The framed photo of Harrison and me in Santorini, my lucky coffee mug from our first product launch, the small succulent I'd nursed for 3 years, it all fit in one pathetic banker's box. The Uber ride home blurred past. I called Harrison, but it went to voicemail. He was probably in a trading session. I sent a text, "Got laid off, coming home." His response was immediate. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Don't worry about anything. We'll talk tonight." That evening, Harrison came home with a massive bouquet of white roses, my favorite sushi from Nobu, and a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon. "This could be a blessing in disguise," he said, pouring champagne. "You've been working yourself to death. Take some time, figure out what you really want to do next." His support felt genuine that first week. He encouraged me to sleep in, meet friends for lunch, catch up on the books I'd been meaning to read. "When was the last time you had a real break?" he asked. "Enjoy it." But by the second week, subtle shifts emerged. When I mentioned updating my LinkedIn profile, he suggested waiting. "Don't look desperate," he advised. When I scheduled coffee with former colleagues to network, he questioned whether that was productive. "I thought you were taking time to recharge," he said over breakfast as I scrolled through job postings on my laptop. "I am, but I also need to start looking. The market's tough right now." He made a non-committal sound, returning to his Financial Times. That evening I noticed he'd been quieter than usual during dinner. When I asked about his day, he gave short answers. The temperature in our penthouse seemed to drop a few degrees. Week 3 brought more obvious tensions. I'd applied to several positions and had lined up some initial phone screens. Harrison started asking specific questions about my job search. How many applications had I sent? What salary range was I targeting? Why wasn't I hearing back faster? "Maybe you're being too selective," he suggested one evening as I reviewed a job description for a CMO role at a promising startup. "It's been 3 weeks, Harrison. These things take time. I'm just saying, maybe you need to be more realistic about your options." The comment stung. Here was a man who'd never job hunted in his life, whose position at Sterling was secured through his father's connections, lecturing me about being realistic. But I swallowed my response, attributing his mood to stress at work. Week 4 brought the first direct mention of money. I'd gone to lunch with my former colleague Sarah at the Smith near Lincoln Center. Nothing extravagant, maybe $40 with tip. When I got home, Harrison was reviewing credit card statements on his laptop. "Lunch was good?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes, Sarah might have a lead at her company." "Expensive lead? That place isn't cheap." I stared at him. "It was $40, Harrison. You spent more than that on your espresso this morning." "I'm working," he replied curtly. The contrast was jarring. While questioning my $40 lunch, Harrison maintained his usual routines without modification. His personal trainer still came 3 times a week at $500 per session. His Wednesday golf game at the club with a $400 guest fee continued. The wine he opened each evening cost more than my lunch. His weekly dinner with clients at 11 Madison Park could fund my entire month of job-searching activities. "Maybe you should cook more instead of ordering in," he suggested one evening as I unpacked Thai food for myself. He was heading out to Le Bernardin with potential investors. "I do cook," I reminded him. "I made dinner 3 times this week. I'm just thinking about unnecessary expenses," he said, adjusting his Hermes tie. Unnecessary expenses. My pad thai was an unnecessary expense, while his $3,000 dinner was business. The distinction was clear: his money, his choices, my burden. By week 6, I'd had several promising interviews, but no offers. The market was indeed brutal with hundreds of applicants for every position. Companies were taking their time conducting multiple rounds of interviews, requesting extensive projects and presentations. I remained optimistic, but Harrison's patience was visibly waning. He started working later, claiming market volatility required extended hours. But I could see his Bloomberg terminal from the kitchen, and often he was just reading news or chatting with colleagues. He was avoiding me creating distance in our own home. Week 8 brought a second-round interview with a fantastic company. The role was perfect chief marketing officer for a sustainable fashion brand with serious funding and ambitious growth plans. I spent days preparing, researching the company, crafting a strategic vision presentation. "How did it go?" Harrison asked that evening, though his tone suggested duty rather than interest. "Really well, actually. I think I have a strong shot at this one." "Good," he said, then paused. "Though maybe you should also consider some director-level positions. CMO might be aiming too high right now." "Too high, Harrison? I was a director at my last role. Why would I step backward?" "I'm being practical. You've been out for 2 months. Beggars can't be choosers." Beggars. The word hung between us like a blade. I went to bed early that night claiming a headache. But really, I needed distance from this man who was revealing himself to be someone I didn't recognize. Week 10. I started noticing Harrison's increased scrutiny of household expenses. He questioned the grocery bills, suggested we cancel the wine club membership, asked if we really needed fresh flowers delivered weekly. Meanwhile, he bought a new Rolex, claiming it was an investment piece. "I'm concerned about our financial health," he explained when I pointed out the contradiction. "Our financial health, Harrison, you made $8 million in bonuses last year. Markets are uncertain. We need to be careful." Careful apparently meant monitoring my spending while maintaining his own standards unchanged. The flowers that had graced our entrance table for years suddenly became frivolous when I was the one enjoying them during the day. Week 12 arrived with another promising interview, this time for a VP of marketing position at an established tech company. The salary was less than my previous role, but the stability was appealing. I was actually excited about the opportunity, seeing it as a chance to regroup and rebuild. That evening, I returned home energized, ready to share the good news about making it to the final round. I found Harrison in his home office, multiple spreadsheets open on his monitor's calculator in hand. The scene felt staged, like he'd been waiting for me. "We need to talk about finances," Harrison announced, not even asking about my interview. He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk, the one usually reserved for the accountant or lawyer. I sat down, feeling like I was about to be fired from my own marriage. "I've been tracking our expenses," he began, turning one of his monitors toward me. The spreadsheet was color-coded and categorized with the kind of detail usually reserved for corporate audits. "Since you lost your job 3 months ago, there's been a significant imbalance in our household contributions." Lost my job. Not was laid off. Not was restructured out. Lost. Like I'd misplaced it somewhere through carelessness. "Look at this," he continued, highlighting columns with his cursor. "Your personal expenses in the last 3 months: clothing $4,000. Dining and entertainment $3,000. Personal care $2,000. Transportation $1,500. That's over $10,000 of consumption with zero contribution." "Harrison, I have savings. I've been using my severance. That's not the point, he interrupted. The point is equity, partnership. For 3 months, I've been carrying 100% of our actual living expenses. The mortgage, $25,000 monthly, maintenance and utilities, $8,000, property taxes, insurance, staff salaries. It all adds up to nearly $50,000 a month that I'm covering alone. Staff salaries. He was including the housekeeper who cleaned up after him, the personal chef who meal prepped his specific diet requirements, the driver who took him to work. Services that existed entirely for his convenience were suddenly joint expenses I was failing to support. When we got married, he continued, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his deal-closing voice. We agreed to be partners, equal partners. You insisted on maintaining your independence, remember? Well, independence means carrying your weight. I've applied to over 60 positions, Harrison. I've had 15 interviews. I'm not sitting around doing nothing. But you're not contributing. And frankly, I'm starting to feel taken advantage of. He leaned back in his $8,000 ergonomic chair, fingers steepled like he was negotiating a hostile takeover. So here's what I propose. Starting tomorrow, we split everything 50-50. All household expenses, all bills, everything down the middle. The numbers he was proposing were insane. $25,000 for half the mortgage on a penthouse he'd bought before we met. $4,000 for half the utilities in a space where his home office alone used more electricity than some small businesses. Half of grocery bills when his personal chef ordered organic grass-fed specialty ingredients for his paleo diet while I was happy with regular produce. Harrison, that's nearly $35,000 a month. You know I can't afford that right now. Then maybe we need to reconsider our living situation. Downsize to something more appropriate for your budget. Downsize. From the penthouse he'd never sell because it was his trophy, his proof of success. This wasn't about money. Harrison had spent $35,000 on a watch last month. This was about power, about putting me in my place. Or, he added, as if presenting a generous alternative, you could accelerate your job search. Take something immediately instead of holding out for the perfect position. I'm sure there are plenty of jobs available if you're willing to be flexible. Flexible, meaning desperate. Meaning grateful for whatever scraps came my way while he continued living like a king in his castle. Is that all? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Well, there's also the matter of your credit cards. There's supplementary cards on my accounts. If we're going 50-50, you'll need to get your own. The calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. He'd planned this ambush, prepared, his spreadsheets rehearsed his arguments. This was Harrison Sterling, the hedge fund manager, not Harrison, my husband. I was just another deal to be optimized, another inefficiency to be corrected. I've created a payment plan, he said, sliding a printed document across the desk. You can use your savings and severance to cover your half. Once you're employed again, we can revisit the arrangement. I picked up the paper, scanning the itemized list. He'd allocated expenses down to the toilet paper, dividing the Charmin Ultra Soft into per-person usage. The pettiness was astounding from a man who could lose this amount in a single bad trade and shrug it off. What about our prenup? I asked. The part about maintaining lifestyle and mutual support. His jaw tightened slightly. That applies to divorce, not daily living arrangements. I'm not abandoning you, Arlene. I'm asking for fairness. Fairness. From a man born into wealth, who'd never known a moment of financial insecurity, who'd been given his first $1 million to invest by Daddy at 22. Fairness from someone whose idea of struggle was flying commercial instead of private. I stood up, document in hand, and looked at my husband of 4 years. Really looked at him. The distinguished gray at his temples that I'd once found attractive now seemed harsh. The confident set of his shoulders looked rigid, defensive. This was who he'd always been, I realized. I'd just been too dazzled by the lifestyle to see it. All right, Harrison, I said, my voice calm and clear. 50-50 it is. His eyebrows shot up. He'd expected tears, anger, pleading, maybe even gratitude for his generous payment plan. Starting tomorrow, I continued, we split everything equally. Good, he said, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Completely reasonable. I agreed, folding the document and placing it in my pocket. I'll implement the new arrangement first thing in the morning. I turned to leave his office, then paused at the door. Oh, and Harrison, I assume this 50-50 split applies to everything in our marriage, not just expenses. What do you mean? I mean everything. Household duties, emotional labor, social obligations, all of it. True equality, just like you wanted. Before he could respond, I walked out, closing the door with a quiet click that felt like the end of a chapter. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of our California king bed, city lights twinkling beyond the windows like a galaxy of possibilities. I didn't cry. There would be time for tears later, maybe, but not now. Now I needed to plan. Harrison wanted to play financial hardball. He'd forgotten that I'd spent 4 years in marketing masters of strategic thinking and tactical execution. He wanted 50-50. I'd give him exactly what he asked for. I pulled out my laptop and began making lists. Accounts to separate services, to divide, boundaries to establish. If Harrison Sterling wanted a roommate instead of a wife, that's exactly what he'd get. And I had a feeling he wouldn't like the true cost of independence nearly as much as he thought he would. The next morning I woke at 5:30, a full hour before Harrison's usual alarm. By the time he emerged from the shower, I was already dressed and in the kitchen making breakfast for one. "Smells good," he commented, eyeing my elaborate omelet with fresh herbs and goat cheese. "Thanks. There's cereal in the pantry if you're hungry," I replied pleasantly, plating my single portion. His brow furrowed. "You're not making breakfast for both of us." 50-50. Remember, I'm responsible for my meals. You're responsible for yours. I bought my ingredients yesterday and labeled them in the fridge. Your shelf is on the right. I'd spent the previous evening reorganizing our entire kitchen. My groceries occupied exactly half the refrigerator and pantry space, marked with bright green labels. His unmarked half looked sparse since the personal chef hadn't been shopping yet this week. While Harrison stood confused in his silk pajamas, I made my first phone call of the day to our housekeeper, Maria. "Good morning, Maria. Yes, I need to adjust our arrangement. Going forward, please only clean the areas I'll designate as mine. I'll pay you directly for half your usual time." Harrison grabbed the phone from my hand. "Maria, ignore that. Come as usual." I smiled sweetly. "Maria, if you clean Harrison's areas, he'll pay you separately. I'll text you a diagram of the apartment showing the division." After I hung up, Harrison's face was flushed with irritation. "This is ridiculous, Arlene. This is 50-50, Harrison. You wanted separate financial responsibilities, you got them." The apartment division I'd mapped out was surgically precise. I claimed the guest bedroom as my office, the hall bathroom as mine exclusively, and exactly half of all common areas. I'd measured the square footage and calculated percentages based on individual usage patterns. The master bedroom remained shared, but I'd divided closet space with tape. By noon, I'd canceled or modified every shared service. The meal prep chef was informed he'd need to prepare separate meals and bill separately. The laundry service would now receive 2 bags clearly marked. Even our streaming services were divided. I kept Netflix and HBO, he got Disney and Apple. "You can't seriously expect us to live like this," Harrison said when he came home for lunch and found me cooking an elaborate meal in exactly half the kitchen. My ingredients spread across my designated counter space while his side sat empty and unused. "I'm adapting to your terms," I replied, plating my seared salmon with lemon butter sauce. "Would you like me to move so you can use your half of the stove?" His personal chef arrived that afternoon, confused by the new arrangement. "Mr. Sterling wants his usual meal prep, but only using ingredients from his designated areas," he confirmed with me. "That's correct. And please bill him directly. I'm no longer on the household account." Harrison's frustration grew as the week progressed. His laundry piled up because he'd never actually learned how to use the machines. The housekeeper, following my instructions, left his office untouched, and dust began accumulating on his monitors. His bathroom ran out of toilet paper because he didn't realize I'd been the one maintaining household supplies all along. "Can you at least show me how to use the washing machine?" he asked on day 4, standing helplessly in front of the high-end appliance with an armful of dress shirts. YouTube has excellent tutorials, I suggested. I wouldn't want to overstep our financial boundaries by providing free domestic consulting. The social implications hit him by the weekend. His monthly poker game was scheduled at our place, a tradition where I usually prepared elaborate spreads and signature cocktails while the men played. The guys are coming tonight, he reminded me that morning. How nice for you. I'll be in my room reading. But the food, the drinks. I'm sure you can handle it. There's a wonderful catering company on the Upper East Side. They do same-day delivery for a premium. That evening, I heard him frantically calling restaurants trying to arrange last-minute delivery. His friends arrived to store bought cheese and crackers beer from the corner bodega, and a host who kept apologizing for the casual setup. I could hear their confused questions through the walls. "Where's Arlene?" "She's busy," Harrison replied tightly. "Everything okay with you two?" another friend asked. "Everything's fine. Just some adjustments." The following Monday marked a turning point. Harrison's law school buddy was hosting a charity gala, one of those $5,000 per plate affairs where appearance was everything. Harrison approached me carefully, like approaching a wild animal. "The Children's Hospital benefit is Thursday," he said. "I already RSVP'd for both of us months ago." "That's nice. I hope you enjoy it." "Arlene, you have to come. The Weatherbys are expecting us. It would be embarrassing to show up alone. I can't afford $2,500 for my ticket right now. But don't worry about being alone. I'm sure you can find someone else to use my seat." His face cycled through several emotions: disbelief, anger, and finally desperation. "I'll pay for your ticket." "That wouldn't be 50-50, would it? I thought you were concerned about me taking advantage." "This is different. This is a social obligation." "Your social obligation. I'm only responsible for 50%, remember? And 50% of a couple's appearance is just you." He attended alone, and I heard about it later from mutual friends. The questions about my absence, the awkward explanations, the whispers behind his back. Harrison Sterling, the power player, suddenly looked like a man with marital problems. In his world, that was blood in the water. Meanwhile, I documented everything meticulously. Every refused shared meal, every declined social event, every household task I performed solely for myself, while he struggled with basic domestic duties. I photographed his designer purchases while claiming poverty, his restaurant receipts, while questioning my grocery spending. I was building a case, though, for what exactly I wasn't sure yet. The third week of our new arrangement brought unexpected revelations. Harrison's credit card statements were delivered, and in his absence, I couldn't resist examining them more closely. The patterns were troubling. Large cash advances payments to unnamed LLCs, recurring charges to what looked like offshore gambling sites. I did some digging through his home office while he was at work, careful to document everything I found. His hedge fund wasn't performing nearly as well as he claimed. Several major positions had gone south, and he was using personal funds to maintain his lifestyle while projecting success. The gambling wasn't recreational. It was desperate, an attempt to recoup losses outside the scrutiny of his partners. That evening, Harrison came home with flowers, an attempt at reconciliation. "Peace offering," he said, holding out white roses. "They're beautiful. You should put them in your office." "Arlene, please. This has gone far enough. I was stressed about work. I overreacted about the money. Can we please just go back to normal?" "Normal? You mean where you control everything, and I pretend to be grateful? That's not fair. I've always taken care of you." "Taken care of me, Harrison. I'm not a pet. I'm your wife. Or at least I was, before you decided I was a financial liability." His phone buzzed with a notification from his bookie, a payment reminder he quickly silenced. But I saw it, and he knew I saw it. The facade was cracking. "How much do you owe?" I asked quietly. "That's none of your concern." "It is if you're using marital assets to cover gambling debts." His face went pale. "How did you—" 50-50 means equal access to information, doesn't it? Or does transparency only go one way? The doorbell rang before he could answer. His dinner delivery had arrived, Thai food from the place around the corner. He'd given up trying to cook after burning 3 meals and setting off the smoke alarm twice. As he unpacked his pad thai, I noticed his hands shaking slightly. The fund is going through a rough patch, he admitted quietly. Some bad trades, over-leveraged positions. It's temporary. And the gambling. I was trying to make it back quickly. Private games, high stakes. I know the players, it should have been easy money. Should have been. The three most dangerous words in finance. I almost felt sorry for him, this man who'd built his identity on being infallible with money suddenly drowning in bad decisions. How much, Harrison? 4 million? Maybe 5. The number hung between us like a guillotine. 5 million in gambling debts to the kind of people who didn't accept payment plans. Suddenly, his desperation to cut expenses made sense. It wasn't about teaching me a lesson, it was about freeing up cash flow for his debts. You need help, I said. I need you to get a job. Any job. We need the income. And there it was. Not I need my wife's support, or we need to work together. Just cold calculations seeing me as a potential revenue stream to solve his self-created problems. I have a final interview tomorrow, I told him. CMO position at Verdant Fashion. The salary is actually higher than my last role. His relief was palpable. That's fantastic. When would you start? If I get it within 2 weeks. When you get it, he corrected, desperate optimism coloring his words. You're brilliant. They'd be stupid not to hire you. Interesting how my brilliance returned when he needed my earning potential. The final interview at Verdant Fashion was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. I spent the morning in my designated office space reviewing my presentation one last time. The company was everything I wanted: sustainable practices, innovative marketing approach, female-founded with serious venture backing. The CEO, Jennifer Chang, had built 2 successful companies before this one. Harrison texted me 4 times that morning wishing me luck with an urgency that had nothing to do with my career satisfaction and everything to do with his financial desperation. The Verdant offices occupied 3 floors of a building in Soho, all exposed brick and plants, the kind of authentic cool that money couldn't fake. Jennifer met me personally at reception, dressed in one of their signature sustainable blazers that somehow looked both professional and effortless. Arlene, I've been looking forward to this, she said, leading me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Your campaign for the Monroe product launch was genius. We studied it in our strategy meetings. The interview felt less like an interrogation and more like a conversation between future colleagues. We discussed market positioning, brand storytelling, the challenge of making sustainability sexy without preaching. Jennifer's team joined us, all smart, engaged people who asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to my answers. Where do you see social commerce going in the next 18 months? Their head of digital asked. I launched into my vision backed by data I'd been tracking independently. Their eyes lit up as I outlined specific strategies for TikTok integration and influencer partnerships that went beyond traditional sponsorships. This was my element where I forgot about Harrison's demands and remembered who I was professionally. One last question, Jennifer said as we wrapped up. Why leave your last role, and why the gap in employment? I'd rehearsed this answer but decided on honesty. The company restructured, eliminating the entire marketing department. As for the gap, I've been selective about my next move, while also dealing with some personal challenges that clarified what I want professionally. Jennifer nodded knowingly. Sometimes life forces us to reevaluate everything. It can be a gift, even when it doesn't feel like one. Walking out of that building, I knew I'd nailed it. The energy was right, the fit was perfect. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Harrison and a text. How did it go? I didn't respond immediately, taking my time walking through Soho, window shopping at boutiques. I couldn't currently afford, but would soon. Let him wonder. Let him experience the uncertainty I'd lived with for months. At home that evening, Harrison was pacing the living room. His laptop open to spreadsheets, showing various financial projections based on different salary scenarios he'd imagined for me. Well, he asked before I'd even set down my bag. It went well. When will you know? They said within a week. His face fell. A week? Can you follow up sooner? Express high interest. That would look desperate, Harrison. Something you once told me to avoid, remember? He returned to his spreadsheets, muttering calculations. I cooked myself dinner, a beautiful piece of salmon with asparagus, while he ate another delivery meal at his desk. The separation in our living arrangements had become physical and emotional. We were two strangers sharing expensive real estate. 3 days later, Jennifer called personally. Arlene, we'd love to have you join us as our chief marketing officer. The offer is $250,000 base plus equity and performance bonuses that could take you to $400,000 total compensation. I accepted immediately, negotiating only the start date, pushing it out 2 weeks to give myself time to prepare. When I told Harrison that evening, his reaction was telling. 400,000 potential. That's excellent. When do you start getting paid? Not congratulations, not pride in my achievement, just immediate focus on cash flow. I start in 2 weeks. First paycheck would be a month after that. His face fell again. 6 weeks, I thought you'd start immediately. I negotiated time to prepare. Besides, I need a new wardrobe for the position. Professional investment in my appearance. How much will that cost? My signing bonus will cover it. Signing bonus? His eyes lit up. How much? 25,000. I watched him mentally allocate that money to his debts before I added, which I'll be putting into my separate savings account, of course. 50-50 means separate finances, as you insisted. The next 2 weeks shifted our dynamic completely. With employment secured, I no longer felt desperate. I interviewed 3 apartment rentals in Brooklyn, all beautiful spaces at a fraction of our penthouse mortgage. When Harrison found the rental applications on the counter, he panicked. What are these options? If we're truly going 50-50, I need to live within my means. Even with my new salary, I can't afford $17,000 a month for half this penthouse. You're not seriously considering leaving. I'm considering financial responsibility, something you lectured me about extensively. He tried a different approach that evening, attempting romance. Candles appeared on the dining table along with dinner from Daniel, our first date restaurant. He'd even dressed up wearing the Tom Ford suit I'd bought him for his birthday. I thought we could celebrate your new job properly, he said, pulling out my chair. This is nice, Harrison, but I already ate. I held up my container of leftover Thai from lunch. You should have checked if I had dinner plans before ordering for 2. He sat alone at the elaborate table, while I retreated to my room with my leftovers and laptop. Through the door, I heard him on the phone negotiating with someone about payment extensions. The panic in his voice was new, a crack in the Harrison Sterling armor. The next morning, I woke to find him in the kitchen attempting to make breakfast. The counter was a disaster of eggshells and spilled coffee, but he'd managed to produce something resembling scrambled eggs and toast. Peace offering, he said, sliding a plate toward me. Made with ingredients from my side of the fridge. I took a bite. The eggs were rubbery and oversalted, but the effort was notable. Thank you. Arlene, I know I've been an ass. The pressure at work, the financial stress, I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. Can we talk about fixing this? Really talk? I set down my fork. What do you want to fix, Harrison? Our marriage or your cash flow problem? Both. They're connected, aren't they? Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, you only started caring about our marriage when you realized you needed my income. He had the grace to look ashamed. That's not entirely true, isn't it? When I was unemployed, you made me feel like a burden. You itemized my toilet paper usage, Harrison. You made spreadsheets of my coffee purchases while betting millions on poker games. I was scared. He admitted the words seemingly pulled from him. The fund is in trouble. Real trouble. The partners don't know how bad my positions are. If they find out about the gambling, you'd be finished. He nodded, looking older than his 41 years. Everything I've built, my reputation, our life, it would all disappear. Our life already has disappeared, I pointed out. You destroyed it the moment you decided I was a liability instead of a partner. I want to fix it. Tell me how to fix it. I looked at this man I'd once loved, maybe still loved somewhere beneath the hurt and anger. His desperation was genuine, but was it for me or for survival? First, you need to get professional help for the gambling. Second, full financial transparency. I want to see everything: accounts, debts, investments, all of it. Third, we go to counseling. And fourth, you sign a postnuptial agreement acknowledging that your financial decisions during this period violated our prenuptial terms. His jaw tightened. A postnup? You're planning to divorce me. I'm protecting myself. The same way you protected yourself when you cut me off financially while I was vulnerable. 50-50, remember? And if I agree to all this, then maybe we have something to rebuild from. But Harrison, I'll never forget how you treated me when I needed support most. That's not something you can spreadsheet away. He sat back calculating. Even now, facing the loss of his marriage, he was running cost-benefit analysis. I need time to think. You have 48 hours. I've already put a deposit on an apartment in Brooklyn. I can move next week if needed. You're serious? Completely. I've learned to take care of myself just like you wanted. That afternoon, while Harrison was at work, I met with a divorce attorney. Patricia Kwan came highly recommended, known for handling high-net-worth divorces with discretion and devastating efficiency. Based on what you've shown me, she said, reviewing my documentation, he's in clear violation of your prenuptial agreement. The financial abandonment during unemployment, the dissipation of marital assets through gambling, we have a strong case. I don't want to destroy him, I said. I just want what's fair. Fair is subjective in divorce, but given his current financial situation, you might have more leverage than you realize. Desperate people make generous settlements. I left her office with forms to file if needed tucked away in my new separate safety deposit box, along with copies of all the financial documents I'd photographed. Insurance, Harrison would call it. Preparation I preferred. That evening I found Harrison on our terrace with a bottle of 30-year-old scotch, watching the sunset over Central Park. He looked smaller, somehow diminished by the weight of his choices. I've been thinking about when we met, he said without turning. You were so different from the other women at those events. You actually cared about the art, not just the networking. I still care about art. I just can't afford it anymore. He laughed bitterly. Neither can I, apparently. Harrison, what happened to you? To us? He took a long sip before answering. I don't know when winning became more important than everything else. The fun, the lifestyle, maintaining the image, it all became this machine that needed constant feeding. And when you lost your job, I panicked. Not about money, really, but about what it meant if I couldn't provide, if I wasn't the successful one. I never needed you to be the only successful one. I needed you to be my partner. I know that now. But I'd built this identity around being Harrison's sterling financial genius provider, master of the universe. Your unemployment felt like exposure, like everyone would see I wasn't enough. So you pushed me away. I pushed you down. There's a difference. One might be forgivable. The other? We sat in silence as the city lights began twinkling below. This penthouse, this view, this life we'd built, it all felt like a movie set. Now beautiful but hollow. I'll agree to your terms, he said finally. All of them. The counseling, the transparency, the postnup. Whatever it takes. Why? Because losing you would cost more than money. It would cost me the only person who ever saw me as more than my net worth. Even if you can't forgive me, I need to try. His phone buzzed with another creditor notification. The contrast was perfect, a man pleading for his marriage while drowning in the consequences of his choices. I wanted to believe in redemption, in the possibility of rebuilding. But trust once shattered doesn't spreadsheet back together. We'll start with counseling, I said. Everything else depends on that. Thank you, he whispered, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, feeling the familiar weight of his wedding ring against my fingers. But I also felt the weight of my apartment keys in my pocket, my escape route if needed. Some lessons once learned can't be unlearned. The 2 weeks before starting my new job became a strange limbo. Harrison threw himself into meeting my conditions with the same intensity he applied to trading. He found a therapist specializing in gambling addiction, attending sessions 3 times a week. He opened his financial records, completely revealing a situation worse than I'd imagined. The fund was down 40%, his personal portfolio decimated by margin calls, and the gambling debts now closer to $6 million. How did it get so bad? I asked, reviewing the statements. One bad bet leading to another, trying to win back losses. Classic gambler's fallacy. You study probability for a living. How could you fall for that? Emotion trumps logic when you're desperate. You of all people should understand that now. He was right. My emotional response to his betrayal had been to wage psychological warfare through domestic arrangements. Neither of us had behaved rationally. Our first couples counseling session was brutal. Dr. Martinez, a small woman with piercing eyes, cut through our polite facades immediately. Harrison, why did you really cut Arlene off financially? I told you, financial pressure. That's a reason, not the why. Try again. He struggled, then finally, I resented her. She had the freedom to fail, to lose her job, and be supported. I've never had that. If I fail, everything collapses. And Arlene, why did you respond with such calculated retaliation? He hurt me when I was vulnerable. That's what happened. I asked why you chose that specific response. I thought about it. Because I wanted him to feel what I felt. Helpless. Dependent. Judged for every small choice. So you both chose to hurt each other rather than communicate. How's that working out? It wasn't, obviously, but acknowledging the mutual destruction was the first step towards something better. Or at least different. The night before starting at Verdant, I stood in my closet selecting my outfit. Harrison appeared in the doorway with a garment bag. For tomorrow, he said, offering it uncertainly. Inside was a stunning, sustainable designer suit from a brand I knew Verdant admired, but I could never afford. The gesture would have been touching if I hadn't known he'd charged it to a credit card he couldn't pay off. It's beautiful, Harrison, but you can't afford this. I wanted to do something nice. Return it. Use the money for your debt payment. His face fell, but he nodded. This was our new reality, every gesture filtered through financial truth. My first day at Verdant exceeded expectations. The team welcomed me warmly. My office had a spectacular view of Lower Manhattan, and Jennifer personally introduced me to key stakeholders. I was given immediate ownership of a product launch that would define the company's next year. No pressure, Jennifer said with a smile, but our Series B funding depends on this campaign succeeding. The challenge energized me. This was what I'd missed, building something meaningful, being valued for my expertise, earning my own success. Harrison texted throughout the day. How's it going? Thinking of you. Proud of you. Can we celebrate tonight? I responded briefly, professionally. The distance I'd maintained was becoming permanent, calcified by habit and hurt. That evening I found Harrison cooking dinner, the kitchen a disaster, but the smell promising. He'd made my favorite pasta dish, the one I'd taught him years ago during a happier time. I wanted to celebrate properly, he said, with food I made and wine I already owned. We ate together for the first time in weeks, the conversation careful but present. He asked about my team, my projects, seeming genuinely interested in the answers. For a moment it felt like before the unemployment, the ultimatum, the unraveling. I have something to tell you, he said over dessert store-bought tiramisu he'd walked 20 blocks to get from my favorite Italian bakery. I've been offered a position at a smaller fund, less prestigious, but more stable. Salary instead of pure commission. That's good, Harrison. It's a significant pay cut, maybe 70% less than my best years. But steady. Yes, enough to cover my debts in 3 years if I'm disciplined. 3 years. He was planning that far ahead, assuming we'd still be together. I wasn't sure I was planning past next week. There's more, he continued. I've put the penthouse on the market. I stared at him. The penthouse was his pride, his trophy, his proof of success. Why? Because it's ridiculous for 2 people even when we were happy. The proceeds will clear most of my gambling debt and leave enough for a reasonable place. Maybe Brooklyn near your new apartment. You're assuming I'm canceling my lease. I'm hoping. But if you don't, at least I'll be nearby, starting over either way. The vulnerability in his admission was striking. Harrison Sterling, master of the universe, talking about a one-bedroom in Brooklyn like it was a possibility worth considering. What about your image, your reputation? Already shot. Words out about my losses. The gambling's still private, but the fund performance isn't. I'm damaged goods in high finance. I'm sorry, Harrison. Don't be. It's liberating in a way. Rock bottom means no more falling. Over the following weeks, we settled into an odd rhythm. I thrived at verdant launching campaigns that exceeded metrics and earned industry recognition. Harrison attended his therapy sessions, worked at the smaller fund, and slowly dismantled the life he'd built on borrowed confidence. The penthouse sold quickly to a tech executive who paid cash $8 million over asking. Harrison used the proceeds exactly as promised, clearing debts, setting aside taxes, and putting a deposit on a modest apartment in Park Slope. "Want to see it?" he asked one Saturday, holding up keys. I agreed, curious about this new version of Harrison who took the subway and bought coffee from carts instead of boutique cafes. The apartment was nice, actually. Pre-war building with original details, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with good light. It was the kind of place young professionals aspired to, not where hedge fund titans landed. The second bedroom could be an office, he said carefully, or a guest room, depending. Depending on what? On whether there's still an OS to salvage. We'd been in counseling for 6 weeks. Dr. Martinez had guided us through resentment, betrayal, fear, and occasionally hope. We'd learned to fight productively, communicate needs without weapons, recognize patterns before they became destructive. I don't know, I admitted. Some days I think yes. Others I remember you calculating my toilet paper usage and want to run. Fair. We stood in what could be a living room, sunlight streaming through windows that faced a tree-lined street instead of skyscrapers. It was human scale, this life he was imagining. Manageable. Real. I kept something from the penthouse, he said, producing a small wrapped package. Inside was the Monet print I'd been admiring the night we met, the one from the Met gift shop I'd bought with my first bonus and hung in our first apartment together before penthouses and prenups and spreadsheets of resentment. You kept this. It reminded me of when we were just 2 people who liked art and each other, before I became an asshole who forgot that was enough. The gesture broke something in me. Not the walls I'd built, those were load-bearing now, but maybe a window letting in possibility. I'm not moving in, I said, but maybe we could try dating. Like actual dates, not networking events or client dinners, just us. I'd like that. We started slowly. Coffee in neutral locations. Walks through Prospect Park. A movie where we sat separately, testing comfort with proximity. He showed up consistently on time, present. No phone calls from bookies, no checking market futures during conversation. One evening, after a particularly good therapy session where we discussed rebuilding trust, Harrison suggested dinner at a small restaurant near my office. Not Daniel, I asked, referencing our usual special occasion spot. Can't afford Daniel, but this place has excellent pasta and a garden. The restaurant was perfect, intimate without being romantic, casual but thoughtful. Harrison had changed too, wearing jeans and a simple button-down instead of his usual designer uniform. He looked younger, lighter. You seemed different. I observed over appetizers we were actually splitting because he was watching his budget. Therapy's helping. Understanding why I equated money with worth, why your unemployment triggered such insecurity. And childhood stuff mostly. Father who measured love in dollars, mother who stayed for lifestyle, not affection. Classic, really. My therapist says I have savior complex. Need to fix broken things, including men who don't want fixing. Did I not want fixing? You wanted managing. There's a difference. We talked through dinner about real things. His fear of inadequacy, my tendency to enable then resent the ways we'd failed each other and ourselves. It was painful but necessary, like resetting a broken bone. I have a proposal, he said over coffee. Not that kind, he added quickly, seeing my expression. A business proposal. I'm listening. Your company needs sustainable finance consulting, right? For the supply chain transparency initiative Jennifer mentioned. How do you know about that? I may have done some research. I'm offering my services. Properly contracted, fair market rate, completely professional. Harrison, hear me out. I'm good at this stuff, you know I am. And it would be a way to contribute something meaningful to what you're building. Not as your husband or ex-husband or whatever we are, but as a professional who happens to have relevant expertise. It was clever, actually. A way to stay connected that wasn't about our marriage, but could help rebuild trust through work. I'll discuss it with Jennifer. No promises. That's all I ask. The consulting arrangement worked better than expected. Harrison's analysis of our supply chain financing was brilliant, identifying cost savings that would fund our entire sustainability program. Jennifer was impressed enough to expand his contract, and suddenly he was building a new reputation as a sustainable finance consultant. "You're good at this," I told him after a particularly successful presentation to our board. "Turns out, I like building things more than trading them." Who knew? Our relationship evolved into something neither married nor divorced, but specifically ours. We dated, intentionally maintained separate residences, split checks based on actual financial reality. The equality he demanded sarcastically became real equality, negotiated and consensual. 6 months into my role at Verdant, I was promoted to president of marketing with equity that would vest into significant wealth if our IPO succeeded. The same week, Harrison landed his largest consulting client, a sustainable fashion conglomerate looking to restructure their entire financial model. "We should celebrate," he suggested. "Properly this time. What did you have in mind?" "Cooking dinner together at my place. You bring dessert? I'll handle the rest." It was the first time I'd been to his apartment for more than a quick visit. He'd made it homey, books actually read, art actually chosen for pleasure, a kitchen actually used. The Monet print hung in the entrance, a reminder of beginnings. We cooked together like we had in our first apartment, bumping hips, stealing tastes, arguing playfully about seasoning. It felt both foreign and familiar, like speaking a language you'd almost forgotten. "I love you," he said suddenly, standing at the stove, stirring risotto. "I know I destroyed what we had, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I just stopped knowing how to show it properly." I set down my wine glass, considering. "I love you too, Harrison, but I'll never trust you the same way. You showed me who you become under pressure, and that person is cruel." "I know. If we do this, really try again, it has to be with that knowledge, that you're capable of cruelty and I'm capable of calculating revenge. We're both dangerous to each other. Or we're honest about our dangers, which makes us safer." It was a fair point. Many couples lived with comfortable delusions about each other. We'd had our illusions forcibly stripped away, leaving either nothing or something more real. "We maintained separate finances," I said. "Forever. No joint accounts, no combined investments." "Agreed." "We keep our own places for at least another year." "Fair." "And we continue therapy individually and together." "Wouldn't stop anyway. Dr. Martinez would hunt me down." I laughed, surprising myself. When had laughing with Harrison become possible again? That night I stayed over for the first time since our separation. Not moving back, just staying. We made love carefully, like people who'd learned each other's capacity for damage. It was different from before, less passionate maybe, but more present. We knew exactly who we were touching and choosing to touch anyway. Months passed. Verdant went public successfully, my equity making me financially independent for the first time. Harrison's consulting firm grew, specializing in sustainable finance for fashion and retail. We dated, fought, reconciled, grew. The 50-50 arrangement he'd demanded became our actual relationship structure. Equal contribution based on proportional ability. When I earned more, I paid more. When he landed large contracts, he took the lead. We tracked nothing spreadsheet, nothing, simply trusted the rhythm of reciprocity. On the anniversary of my layoff, the day everything changed, Harrison suggested dinner at the place with the garden. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out an envelope. Inside was a single document, a receipt showing the final payment on his gambling debt made 3 months early. "It's done," he said. "All of it." The debts, the lying, the desperation. Clean slate. How consulting took off faster than expected, and I've been living extremely simply. Turns out I don't need much when I'm not trying to prove something. What now? Now I'd like to propose something. Not marriage, we're already married technically, but moving forward together. Your place or mine or somewhere new. An actual partnership this time. I thought about the journey from that horrible night with his spreadsheets to this moment. The cruelty, the retaliation, the slow rebuilding. We weren't the same people who'd met at the Met dazzled by art and possibility. We were scarred, wary, but perhaps stronger for knowing our own darkness. I need to tell you something, I said. I've been looking at houses. In Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, garden whole thing. His face showed careful hope. For yourself. For us, potentially. If we do this right. What's right? Both names on the deed, proportional ownership based on down payment contribution. Separate offices. Prenup amended to reflect current reality. And Harrison. Yes. If you ever make a spreadsheet of my expenses again, I'll burn the house down with you in it. He laughed, really laughed for the first time in over a year. Deal. Though technically it would be 50% your house, so you'd be committing partial arson. Worth it. We bought the house in Cobble Hill, a brownstone that needed work, but had good bones. Like us, perhaps. We renovated it slowly, paying cash, making decisions together, but maintaining individual spaces. His office, my office, our bedroom. The language mattered. The housewarming party brought together our separate worlds that had evolved during the split. My verdant colleagues mingled with Harrison's sustainable finance clients. Friends who'd taken sides cautiously reconnected. Jennifer Chang pulled me aside at one point. He seems different, she observed, watching Harrison explain supply chain financing to a group of young entrepreneurs passionate but not pompous. We both are. The good kind of different. The real kind. Later that evening, after everyone left, we sat on our back deck, city lights distant but visible. The garden needed work, but spring bulbs were pushing through soil promise of possibility. Thank you, Harrison said suddenly. For what? For showing me who I really was when I tried to break you. For breaking me back. For letting us rebuild into something honest. You know the rebuilding never stops, right? We'll have to choose each other every day. 50-50. 50-50. A year later, I was named CEO of Verdant, when Jennifer moved on to her next venture. Harrison's firm had 12 employees and a reputation for transforming traditional finance into sustainable practice. We were profiled at the Times business section, the power couple who divorced emotionally if not legally, then rebuilt on terms neither traditional nor modern, but entirely their own. The reporter asked how we'd survived what would have destroyed most marriages. We didn't survive, I told her. The original marriage died that night he demanded 50-50. What we have now is something we built from the ashes. And you're happy. I looked at Harrison, this man who'd shown me his worst self and then fought to become better. Who'd learned to cook, do laundry live, simply love honestly. Who still sometimes reached for spreadsheets in stress, but caught himself laughing at the impulse. We're real, I said. Happiness is negotiable. Reality is not. The article ran with a photo of us in our garden, both holding tools, actually working rather than posing. The headline read, "The 50-50 Solution, How One Couple Rebuilt Equity in Love and Life." Harrison framed it for his office next to the Monet print, and a photo from our first apartment, 3 versions of us coexisting as reminder and warning and hope. You know what the irony is, he said that evening, cooking dinner while I reviewed contracts for Verdant's European expansion. What? I demanded 50-50 to punish you, but it ended up saving us. True equality, even when forced, beats false harmony. You could have just asked for true equality without the cruelty. Could I? Would you have heard it? Would I have even known how to articulate it? He was right. We'd needed the breakdown, the ugliness, the complete destruction of our careful facades. Some lessons require burning. No more tests, though, I said. No more manufactured crisis to prove points. Agreed. Though technically you manufactured quite a bit of crisis yourself with the domestic warfare campaign. Justified crisis. There's a difference. Is there, though? We debated this as we debated many things now with humor rather than heat. Our marriage had become an ongoing negotiation explicit, rather than assumed chosen, rather than defaulted. Dr. Martinez had discharged us from couples therapy with what she called a successful reconstruction. You two did something I rarely see, she said in our last session. You let the original relationship die completely instead of trying to resuscitate it. Then you built something new with full knowledge of each other's capacity for both love and damage. It's not romantic in the traditional sense, but it's perhaps more intimate. So we're fixed? Harrison asked. You're functional. Fix is an endpoint. Functional is a practice. We practiced. Every day we practiced choosing each other despite knowing exactly who we were choosing. Harrison still struggled with money anxiety, checking account balances obsessively when stressed. I still calculated emotional equations, keeping mental spreadsheets of give and take. But we named these patterns, laughed at them, worked with them rather than against them. The night before a major acquisition meeting that would make me one of the youngest Fortune 500 CEOs, I couldn't sleep. Harrison found me in my office at 3 a.m. reviewing numbers that didn't need reviewing. Your version of checking account balances, he observed, bringing tea. Genetic, maybe, or contagious. What are you really worried about? I considered lying defaulting to strength. But that was the old way, the way that had nearly destroyed us. That I'll become like you were. That power will make me cruel. That I'll start keeping spreadsheets on people's worth. You might, he said simply. Power does that. But you'll have something I didn't. What? Someone who knows exactly what you look like when you're becoming cruel, and who'll call you on it immediately. You'd do that. 50-50, remember? You saved me from my worst self. Fair's fair. The acquisition went through. I became CEO of a combined company worth $2 billion. Harrison sent flowers to my office, simple daisies from the corner bodega with a note. Remember who you are. Love your 50%. That evening I came home to find him in our garden planting vegetables for summer. His hands were dirty, his jeans torn, this man who'd once spent thousands on manicures and designer clothes. Celebrating my success, I asked. Planting tomatoes. They'll be ready in August. Want to help? I changed out of my CEO costume and joined him in the dirt, planting our future one seed at a time. The woman who'd stood in that penthouse being lectured about 50-50 contributions would have laughed at this scene. Or cried. Or both. Harrison. Thank you for trying to break me. He looked up surprised. That's a strange thing to thank someone for. If you hadn't, I'd never have known I was unbreakable. And we'd never have found this. This being gardening in Brooklyn. This being real. As the sun set over our imperfect garden behind our hard-won house, I thought about the journey from that penthouse precipice to this gentle ground. We'd fallen far, Harrison and I, but we'd fallen together. And in the breaking, we'd found something worth building. The 50-50 solution born in cruelty had evolved into something neither of us expected: actual partnership. Not the Instagram version with sunset kisses and hashtag couple goals. But the real thing, with separate checking accounts and shared soil under our fingernails, with knowledge of each other's darkness and daily choice toward light. I love you. I told him, meaning this version, the broken and rebuilt Harrison who planted tomatoes and knew my worth had nothing to do with my salary. 50-50, he replied. But he was smiling, and I knew he meant 100%. Just divided honestly between two whole people who'd learned the hard way that real partnership isn't about splitting bills. It's about choosing to plant seeds together, knowing full well that either of you could salt the earth, but trusting that you won't. Or if you do that, you'll till the soil again together and plant something even better. The tomatoes were excellent that August. We ate them in our garden. Two executives who'd learned to get our hands dirty, finally understanding that 50-50 isn't about keeping score. It's about knowing the score and choosing to play anyway. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to rebuild trust after it was completely shattered? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the biggest betrayals can lead to the strongest rebuilds. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about love money and the complicated spaces between. Thank you for watching, and remember your worth is never determined by someone else's spreadsheet.